I need you to step away from the counter and put the phone down.
I am just trying to pay for my food. I know my rights. You can't make me leave.
Officer Ryan McKenzie had been with the Denver Police Department for 14 years. And in those 14 years, she'd compiled a record that should have raised immediate concerns. 19 complaints, 16 of them involving African American citizens. A black physician in Cherry Creek, accused of car theft while unlocking her own Mercedes. An African American attorney in Lodo, questioned about loitering outside his own law office. A black executive in Washington Park, detained for suspicious behavior while jogging through her own neighborhood. Each one involved an African American professional in a predominantly white area. Each one followed the same script. Officer McKenzie couldn't believe black people belonged in upscale Denver neighborhoods. Each complaint ended identically. Implicit bias training that McKenzie attended but never applied. One Tuesday afternoon in Denver, her 14 years of racial profiling collided with someone McKenzie never expected. A black woman who protected the President of the United States. Someone who knew federal law, knew her rights, and knew exactly what Officer McKenzie was doing. And that collision would finally end McKenzie's career, cost the city $1.8 million, and bring the Department of Justice into an investigation that would expose a department that had tolerated her pattern of racial profiling for nearly a decade and a half. An African American woman in her late 30s, Special Agent Simone Beaumont, was standing in line at a sandwich shop in Denver's Highland neighborhood. Agent Beaumont wasn't just anyone. 12 years with the United States Secret Service, Presidential Protection Division. She'd stood post at the White House, protected 3 presidents, coordinated security for international summits across 4 continents. She was in Denver on her day off during a presidential visit, grabbing lunch between security briefings, wearing casual clothes, jeans, a blazer, her service weapon concealed at her hip as federal regulations required. No crime, no disturbance, no violation, just ordering a turkey club and checking her phone. But Officer McKenzie saw her through a lens warped by 14 years of unchecked racial bias. Couldn't process that an African American woman in this neighborhood could be a federal agent. Couldn't imagine that the black woman she was about to confront had security clearance that superseded anything McKenzie would ever have. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Denver, Colorado, a city of 715,000 in the Rocky Mountain region, Highland. One of Denver's most rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods. Victorian homes restored to $800,000 price tags, boutique coffee shops, upscale restaurants, yoga studios and craft breweries on every corner. Median household income, $89,000. The neighborhood was 78% white. The kind of place where seeing a black face raises eyebrows, where African Americans are assumed to be service workers or don't belong. The sandwich shop on 32nd Avenue served artisan sandwiches to professionals, tourists, and the affluent residents who displaced the neighborhood's original Latino community. It was 1:45 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Clear skies, mid-70s, light breeze carrying the scent of fresh bread from the bakery next door. Special Agent Simone Beaumont had been with the United States Secret Service since 2011. 12 years of protecting presidents, investigating financial crimes, coordinating security operations that kept the most powerful people in the world safe. She'd graduated from Howard University, where she'd been president of the Criminal Justice Society. She'd completed training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, finishing 3rd in her class of '87. She'd earned her place on the Presidential Protection Division, one of the most competitive assignments in federal law enforcement. Her colleagues called her meticulous. Her supervisors called her exceptional. Even the agents she'd beaten out for assignments called her formidable. She believed in service. She believed in excellence. She believed that protecting democracy meant protecting everyone equally. But she also knew from both professional experience and personal reality that being black in America meant constantly proving you belonged, that racism didn't stop at federal badges or security clearances, that white people saw the color before the credentials. That Tuesday afternoon, Simone had finished a security briefing at the downtown hotel where the president was staying. Nothing unusual, nothing exciting, just the normal routine. She checked her watch, 1:30 p.m. Time for lunch before the evening security sweep. She'd walked 3 blocks to the sandwich shop a colleague had recommended, parked her rental car, a black Dodge Charger, government plates, completely legitimate, on the street, entered the shop, stood in line behind a couple ordering complicated salads. She was doing exactly what thousands of people do every single day, waiting in line, checking email on her phone, planning to order lunch. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual, nothing that should attract police attention. Nothing that would make anyone look twice at a white person doing the exact same thing. But Officer Mackenzie, 14 years on the Denver PD with 19 complaints documenting her pattern of targeting black citizens, saw something different. Ryan Mackenzie had been with Denver PD since her early 20s. She'd worked various assignments over the years, but spent the last 6 years on patrol in the affluent neighborhoods: Cherry Creek, Highland, Washington Park, Lodo. Her supervisors kept her in these assignments despite her complaint history, because, in their words, she knows the area, residents feel safe with her, she's proactive. What they meant was that Mackenzie stopped every black person she saw, questioned African Americans about their presence, treated black citizens like suspects by default. 19 complaints in 14 years, 16 of them involving African American individuals. The pattern was unmistakable. 2016, a black teacher walking in Cherry Creek Village. Officer Mackenzie stopped her, demanding ID and proof she lived in the area. The woman was actually walking to her condo 2 blocks away, returning from the grocery store. Mackenzie claimed she matched a description of a shoplifter, description that consisted of black female. Complaint filed. Closed with implicit bias training. 2018, an African American businessman sitting in his parked Tesla in Lodo. Mackenzie approached, ran the plates 3 times, demanded proof of ownership. The man was actually the CEO of a tech startup, waiting for a meeting at the office building across the street. Mackenzie claimed the vehicle looked expensive for the area, a lie, since Teslas filled every Lodo parking lot. Complaint filed. Resolved with Diversity Workshop. 2021, a black nurse jogging in Washington Park. Mackenzie detained her, questioning why she was running through the neighborhood. The woman was actually a cardiac nurse at University Hospital, running her regular 5-mile route through the park where she'd lived for 8 years. Mackenzie claimed she looked suspicious and nervous because a cop was harassing her. Complaint filed, dismissed with written counseling. Every complaint told the same story. Mackenzie saw African Americans in white spaces and couldn't accept their legitimacy, couldn't accept that they belonged. She assumed stolen vehicles, assumed theft, assumed trespassing, assumed criminal intent before criminal activity. She demanded proof of belonging, proof of ownership, proof of legitimate presence. Things she never demanded from white people in the same locations doing the same things. And when complaints were filed, the department responded with training certificates instead of discipline, with workshops instead of consequences, with one more chance instead of termination. Internal Affairs had a file on Mackenzie that should have resulted in termination years ago. 19 documented incidents, 2 settlements paid, 11 credible witnesses, 7 sustained complaints. But Mackenzie had allies in the department, supervisors who valued her arrest numbers and proactive policing, union representatives who protected her at every disciplinary hearing, and a system that prioritized officer retention over accountability to the black citizens she repeatedly profiled. That afternoon, Mackenzie was on patrol in Highland when she noticed the black woman entering the sandwich shop. Mackenzie pulled her patrol car into a loading zone across the street and watched. Her mind made the calculation it always made. Black woman plus upscale neighborhood equals doesn't belong. Black woman plus blazer that might conceal something equals suspicious. She didn't consider that this could be a professional on her lunch break, that this could be someone conducting legitimate business, that this could be a federal agent. She didn't notice the confident bearing, the professional attire, The government rental car parked legally on the street. She saw what her biases trained her to see: a black woman who didn't belong, a situation that needed investigation, a potential threat. Mackenzie entered the sandwich shop, her hand resting near her service weapon. Simone noticed immediately. She'd been trained to notice. Threat assessment was her job. She recognized the body language, the positioning, the suspicious approach. Her stomach tightened. Here we go again, another white cop who can't believe I belong. Mackenzie approached. "Ma'am, can I ask what you're doing in this neighborhood?" Simone turned slowly, her hands visible. "Officer, I'm ordering lunch. Is there a problem?" Mackenzie stepped closer, her posture aggressive. "I need to see some identification. Now." "Do you think officers should be required to articulate reasonable suspicion before demanding ID? Drop your answer below." Simone kept her voice calm, professional. "Officer, I'm a federal law enforcement agent. I'm armed under federal authority. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. I'm going to reach for them, slowly." Mackenzie's hand moved to her weapon. "Don't move." "Federal agent? Sure you are. Keep your hands where I can see them." "Officer, I'm Special Agent Simone Beaumont, United States Secret Service. My credentials." "I said don't move." Mackenzie's voice rose. "I've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. You match the description." Simone's jaw tightened. "What description? What suspicious activity? I'm standing in line ordering lunch." "Ma'am, you're being uncooperative. Turn around and place your hands on the wall." "Officer Mackenzie," Simone read the nameplate. "I'm a federal agent. I'm armed. I'm reaching for my credentials now, slowly, with 2 fingers." "Stop! I will draw my weapon." The sandwich shop fell silent. 5 customers and 2 employees watching, phones coming out. Simone slowly, carefully reached into her jacket with 2 fingers and withdrew her credentials, the distinctive gold badge and federal identification of a United States Secret Service agent. She held them out. "Special Agent Simone Beaumont, Presidential Protection Division. I'm in Denver on official business. This is my federal identification." Mackenzie snatched the credentials, examined them with obvious skepticism. "These could be fake. They're not fake. Call the Secret Service field office. Call the number on that card. They'll verify." "I'm not calling anyone until I verify what you're doing here." "Why are you armed?" "Because I'm a federal law enforcement officer. I'm required to carry my service weapon. This is completely legal." "Not if you're impersonating an officer." Simone's voice hardened. "I'm not impersonating anyone. I'm a special agent with the United States Secret Service. You're currently detaining a federal agent without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. This is unlawful." Mackenzie's face flushed. "Turn around. Hands on the wall. Now." "Officer, you have no legal authority to detain me. I've identified myself. I've shown you credentials. You have articulated no crime, no violation, no reasonable suspicion. I have reasonable suspicion that you're not who you say you are. Based on what? That I'm black and ordering lunch in Highland? Based on the fact that you're being uncooperative and these credentials look suspicious. They look suspicious because you've never seen a black woman with federal credentials before." The shop owner, a white man in his 50s, stepped forward. "Officer, I've seen Secret Service credentials before. Those look real to me." Mackenzie spun on him. "Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you." A white woman in business attire spoke up. "Officer, she's just ordering lunch. Why are you doing this?" Everyone needs to step back. This woman is being detained for investigation. Within 4 minutes, another patrol car arrived. Mackenzie had called for backup, claiming an uncooperative subject, possible impersonation of a federal officer. Sergeant Marcus Caldwell stepped out, a 22-year veteran who'd reviewed Mackenzie's file more times than he cared to count. He entered the shop and immediately saw the problem. A professional black woman, calm and composed, holding Secret Service credentials. Mackenzie, aggressive and defensive, treating a federal agent like a suspect. "Officer Mackenzie, what's the situation?" "Sarge, subject claims to be Secret Service. I need to verify her credentials and identity before releasing her." Caldwell took the credentials, examined them carefully. The badge was authentic. He'd worked presidential security details before. The ID was legitimate, with all the proper security features, holographic seals, the works. He pulled out his phone and called the Denver Secret Service field office. 2 minutes later, he had confirmation. Special Agent Simone Beaumont, Presidential Protection Division, currently in Denver on protective assignment, armed under federal authority. Credentials authentic. He hung up and turned to Mackenzie with an expression of barely contained anger. Officer Mackenzie, these credentials are legitimate. Agent Beaumont is exactly who she says she is, a federal agent, on official business, legally armed. Mackenzie hesitated. But Sarge, she was acting suspicious. What suspicious behavior? Standing in line? Ordering lunch? Being black in Highland? I had a report. What report? Dispatch didn't send you here. I checked. Mackenzie stammered. I observed suspicious behavior. You observed a black woman in a white neighborhood and assumed she didn't belong. That's what you observed. Simone spoke, her voice controlled but firm. Sergeant, I'm Special Agent Simone Beaumont, badge number 2847. I've been with the service for 12 years. I'm in Denver protecting the President of the United States. I came here to buy lunch. She gestured around the shop. Officer Mackenzie entered, immediately demanded identification, refused to believe my credentials, accused me of impersonation, threatened to draw her weapon, and attempted to detain me, all without any reasonable suspicion or probable cause. She paused, meeting Caldwell's eyes. I protect the President. I've coordinated security for international summits. I have top secret clearance. And your officer just treated me like a criminal for ordering a sandwich while black. Caldwell closed his eyes briefly. This was exactly what he'd warned command staff about. Exactly the pattern documented in Mackenzie's file. Agent Beaumont, on behalf of the Denver Police Department, I apologize. This was completely inappropriate and unprofessional. He turned to Mackenzie. Officer, return to your vehicle. Now. We'll discuss this at the station. But Sarge, now Mackenzie, a Hispanic man in his 30s approached. Officer, I recorded the whole thing. Started when she came in and started harassing this woman for no reason. Want me to send it to you? A white woman joined. I called 911. I told them an officer was racially profiling someone in the sandwich shop. This was harassment, plain and simple. An Asian business owner from the shop next door spoke up. Agent Beaumont comes here every time she's in town. We know her. She's Secret Service. Officer Mackenzie has stopped black customers before. I've seen it. Multiple witnesses, different backgrounds, all confirming the same story. Mackenzie stopped a federal agent for no reason other than being black in Highland. Within 15 minutes, a commander's vehicle arrived. Caldwell had called immediately. Captain Jennifer Whitmore stepped out, a 25-year veteran who'd been pushing for Mackenzie's termination for 3 years and had been blocked by Union protection and command staff reluctance. She entered the shop and assessed the scene. A federal agent, clearly credentialed. Mackenzie, looking defensive. Witnesses with phones out. Body cameras running. The lawsuit that finally couldn't be ignored. She spoke with Simone, examined the credentials herself, called the Secret Service field office for additional confirmation, reviewed Caldwell's account, and listened to witness statements. Her jaw tightened. This was exactly what she'd warned about. This was the pattern she'd documented. This was the incident that would bring federal scrutiny. Then she turned to Mackenzie with an expression of finality. Badge and weapon. Now. Mackenzie's face went pale. Captain, you just racially profiled a federal agent. You detained her without reasonable suspicion. You refused to accept her credentials. You threatened to draw your weapon on someone protecting the President of the United States. She stepped closer. 19 complaints, Mackenzie. 16 of them, just like this. Black professionals in white neighborhoods, and you couldn't accept they belonged. I've been trying to fire you for 3 years. Command staff wouldn't listen. The Union protected you. But you just profiled a Secret Service agent in front of witnesses and cameras. Captain, I had reasonable suspicion. What reasonable suspicion? A black woman buying lunch. That's not reasonable suspicion. That's racism. That's the pattern we've documented for 14 years. Badge and weapon. Everything. You're on administrative leave effective immediately. But let's be clear. Your career is over. Mackenzie handed them over, her hands shaking. Captain Whitmore turned to Simone. Agent Beaumont, on behalf of the Denver Police Department, I apologize. This was racial profiling. This was a violation of your rights. This was indefensible. Officer McKenzie will be placed on administrative leave pending investigation. But between you and me, her career is over. I'll be recommending immediate termination. If you choose to file a complaint or pursue legal action, and you should, the department will cooperate fully. This pattern needed to end 14 years ago. Simone looked at McKenzie, then at Whitmore, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. Captain, I've been a federal agent for 12 years. I protect the President of the United States. I've coordinated security operations in hostile environments across the globe. I have security clearance that took years to earn. And your officer just treated me like a car thief for buying a turkey club in a sandwich shop. She gestured to her credentials. I teach constitutional law at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. I've trained hundreds of officers on Fourth Amendment rights. And Officer McKenzie just violated mine right in front of witnesses and cameras. She looked at the body camera on Caldwell's chest. Everything is documented. The lack of reasonable suspicion, the racial profiling, the refusal to accept federal credentials, all of it. So yes, I'll be filing a complaint. And yes, I'll be pursuing legal action. Not for money, but because if this happens to me, a federal agent with 12 years of service, someone who protects the president, imagine what happens to people who don't have my badge, my training, my resources. How many young black men has Officer McKenzie stopped who couldn't fight back? How many people did she profile who didn't have witnesses or cameras? How many complaints would it have taken before someone acted? By that evening, the story was spreading through Denver's African American community and onto national news. Video clips from witnesses' phones went viral. #Secret Service. While black started trending. News outlets picked up the story within hours. Headlines: Secret Service agent racially profiled by Denver police while buying lunch. Federal agent detained by officer with 16 similar complaints against black citizens. DOJ reviewing Denver police after Secret Service agent profiled in. Sandwich shop. The United States Secret Service issued a statement. We stand firmly behind Special Agent Beaumont. The incident described as completely unacceptable. Agent Beaumont is an exemplary federal law enforcement officer, and we support her fully in any actions she chooses to take. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division announced it was opening an investigation into the Denver Police Department's handling of racial profiling complaints. The NAACP condemned the incident, demanding termination and systemic reform. The Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association publicly defended Simone, calling it one of the most egregious cases of racial profiling we've seen. Profiling a federal agent demonstrates how pervasive this problem is. Denver's Secret Service field office received hundreds of calls supporting Simone, along with demands that the department face consequences. Simone hired Marcus Grant, a prominent civil rights attorney who'd won $18 million in similar cases. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later, naming Officer Ryan McKenzie, her supervisors who'd ignored 19 complaints over 14 years, Captain Whitmore, who tried to discipline her but been blocked, and Denver Police Department. The allegations were comprehensive and damning. Racial profiling in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion or probable cause in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Denial of civil rights under 42 U.S.C. Sector 1983. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. False imprisonment. Supervisory liability for failure to train, discipline, or terminate despite documented pattern. Municipal liability for deliberate indifference to Officer McKenzie's pattern of racial profiling. Violation of Colorado civil rights statutes. Federal officer interference under 18 U.S.C. Sever 111. The complaint included McKenzie's entire history, presented in devastating detail. 19 complaints over 14 years. 16 involving African American citizens in similar circumstances, affluent areas, professional settings, white neighborhoods. All documented, all investigated, all resulting in minimal discipline, all dismissed with training that never changed her behavior. The lawsuit laid out the pattern systematically, showing complaint after complaint, year after year, black victim after black victim, similar circumstances, similar assumptions, similar harassment, $1.8 million in damages, plus attorney fees, policy reforms, and mandatory federal oversight. Denver's city attorneys reviewed the case. The liability was clear. Security footage from the sandwich shop showed everything: the innocent activity, the unjustified stop, the escalation. Body camera footage captured Mackenzie's inability to articulate reasonable suspicion, her refusal to accept federal credentials, her escalating aggression. Multiple independent witnesses corroborated the account. Simone's credentials proved her complete legitimacy, verified by the Secret Service field office. Mackenzie had no legal basis for the stop, no crime, no reasonable suspicion, no articulable facts. Internal affairs files documented the pattern: 19 similar complaints, all ignored or minimally addressed. The Department of Justice was now involved, reviewing the entire department for civil rights violations. Every element of a Para 1983 claim was present. Fourth Amendment violation, check. 14th Amendment violation, check. Municipal liability for deliberate indifference, check. Federal officer interference, check. Qualified immunity, impossible to apply given the clear precedent and federal agent status. The city's risk assessment was clear: go to trial and lose publicly, with a jury verdict potentially 3 times higher, plus face ongoing DOJ scrutiny. Settle now and implement reforms. The city settled 8 months later. $1.8 million paid to Special Agent Simone Beaumont, the largest settlement in Denver history for racial profiling. Officer Ryan Mackenzie was terminated 4 weeks after the incident. The union initially filed grievances, but withdrew after reviewing the evidence and facing public pressure from federal law enforcement organizations. The termination letter was comprehensive. Officer Mackenzie engaged in racial profiling, detaining a federal law enforcement officer based solely on race without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. She violated department policy on constitutional policing, bias-free policing, and proper detention procedures. She has demonstrated a pattern over 14 years of similar conduct, indicating this was not an isolated incident, but a persistent failure to respect the civil rights of African American citizens. Her continued employment creates unacceptable liability for the city, violates federal law regarding interference with federal officers, and violates the civil rights of citizens, particularly African American residents. The letter specifically cited 16 prior complaints showing the same racial profiling pattern, noting that progressive discipline had failed to modify behavior. Employment terminated immediately without appeal rights due to the severity of constitutional violations and federal officer interference. Mackenzie's name was entered into the National Decertification Index, preventing her from ever working in law enforcement again, anywhere in the country. Her 14-year law enforcement career ended permanently. No pension enhancements, no retirement in good standing, no law enforcement work anywhere. The union initially attempted to fight the termination, claiming due process violations. The city provided Mackenzie's complete complaint file, body camera footage, witness statements, and Simone's federal credentials to the arbitrator. Faced with the documentation and the DOJ investigation, the union withdrew the appeal 3 weeks later, noting they must also protect the rights of citizens and respect federal law enforcement. Mackenzie released no public statement. Special Agent Simone Beaumont testified before Denver City Council at a packed hearing 2 months after the incident. Dozens of supporters filled the room, including Secret Service colleagues in suits, federal law enforcement representatives, community members, and local clergy. I'm a special agent with the United States Secret Service. I've dedicated 12 years to protecting the president, investigating financial crimes, and serving this country. I've worked in Denver on protective assignments multiple times over the years. I know my rights. I know the Constitution because I've sworn to uphold it, because I've trained officers on it, because I enforce federal law every single day. And Officer Mackenzie stopped me for ordering a sandwich while black. I was humiliated in front of a sandwich shop full of people. I was treated like a criminal in a city where I served the President of the United States. 19 complaints over 14 years, 16 involving African Americans. That's not bad luck. That's not mistakes. That's a pattern. That's policy. That's the department tolerating racism. A pattern your department tolerated for 14 years because Officer Mackenzie's supervisors valued her arrest numbers over the constitutional rights of the black people she profiled. She paused, looking at each council member. $1.8 million is what it cost to finally remove one officer who should have been fired after complaint 3. But money doesn't undo standing in a sandwich shop being treated like a suspect. It doesn't erase explaining to my colleagues why a Denver cop thought I was impersonating a federal agent. And it doesn't prevent the next officer with 19 complaints from doing the same thing to the next victim who can't fight back. This council needs to ask itself, why did it take 19 complaints? Why did it take a lawsuit? Why did it take a federal agent to finally get action? And what happened to all the victims before me who couldn't fight back? Standing ovation from supporters. Several council members visibly uncomfortable. Denver PD announced policy reforms 4 months later under pressure from the lawsuit and DOJ investigation. Chief Ronald Martinez acknowledged the need for change and committed to preventing future incidents. Measures included automatic supervisory review after 2 complaints with similar patterns within 24 months. Mandatory termination proceedings after 3 sustained complaints involving racial profiling. Real-time flagging system for officers with patterns of stops involving racial disparities. Mandatory supervisor approval for any stop in affluent neighborhoods involving only suspicious person without specific criminal activity. Body camera footage review of 100% of stops involving minority citizens in predominantly white areas. Anti-racism training conducted by civil rights experts and victims of profiling, not police trainers. Command staff accountability. Supervisors who ignore patterns face discipline up to termination. Community Oversight Board with subpoena power to review complaint patterns. Quarterly public reporting of stops by officer, race, location, and outcome. Integration of National Decertification Index. Checks to prevent hiring officers terminated for racial profiling elsewhere. Federal monitoring by the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division for 3 years. Why do departments wait for the 19th complaint instead of acting on the 2nd? Why does it take a lawsuit to implement common sense accountability? Comment your thoughts. Reforms to be fully implemented within 9 months, with progress reports every quarter to the DOJ. This wasn't about one afternoon. This wasn't about one stop. This was about a department that let Officer Ryan Mackenzie profile black citizens for 14 years, despite 19 documented complaints showing a clear pattern of racial profiling. The pattern was obvious from complaint 2. A black professional questioned in an upscale area. An African American resident asked for proof in their own neighborhood. It was undeniable by complaint 7. Same story, different victim. Same bias, different day. Same assumptions, different location. But Denver PD kept Mackenzie on patrol, kept assigning her to affluent neighborhoods, kept ignoring the warnings, kept accepting the excuses until she finally profiled someone with the knowledge, resources, and federal badge to force accountability. Simone paid the price, treated like a criminal for ordering lunch, detained for being black in Highland, humiliated in front of witnesses for doing what white people do without question. The message delivered clearly: your federal badge doesn't matter, your service doesn't matter, your humanity doesn't matter as much as your race. Ryan Mackenzie's career is over. Terminated, decertified, barred from law enforcement permanently. That's consequence. The city paid $1.8 million. That's accountability. The department implemented reforms under DOJ oversight. That's progress. But those measures came after 14 years and 19 complaints. 14 years of black victims who didn't have a Secret Service badge. 14 years of African American citizens who were profiled and had no recourse, no federal authority, no national platform, no one listening. How many others did Officer Mackenzie stop in those 14 years? How many young black men detained without cause? How many African American women questioned about belonging? How many professionals humiliated who couldn't fight back? How many complaints never filed because victims knew nothing would change? The real question isn't why Officer Mackenzie did this. Racists will racist. The question is why the system let her keep doing it. Why do departments wait for complaint 19? instead of acting on complaint 2? Why do they recognize patterns after 16 similar incidents instead of stopping them after 3? Why do they prioritize protecting officers with documented racist patterns over protecting the black citizens those officers target? Why does it take a federal agent, someone with credentials even racists have to respect, to finally get accountability? Why do settlements come from taxpayer money, while officers who cause them face no financial consequences? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Ryan McKenzie patrolling white neighborhoods for 14 years, if we don't address the culture that protected her despite the pattern, if we don't hold supervisors accountable for ignoring complaints, then we're just waiting for the next officer with 19 complaints, the next federal agent, the next African American professional who gets profiled for existing while black. This case represents thousands of others that never make news. Tens of thousands of black Americans profiled every year by officers who never face consequences. Millions of stops based on race, not crime. A system where being black is treated as reasonable suspicion. Comment if this should be federal law. Any officer with 3 similar complaints within 3 years faces automatic termination. No implicit bias training that doesn't work. Immediate termination. 3 complaints. 3 similar incidents. 3 African Americans profiled in similar circumstances. That's not isolated incidents. That's a pattern. And patterns should end careers, not black lives' comfort and dignity. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think 14 years of complaints should result in accountability, before year 15, if you believe federal agents deserve the same presumption of legitimacy that white people get automatically, then hit that subscribe button. We're exposing police misconduct. We're demanding real accountability. We're fighting for every black American who's been profiled. This isn't about one officer or one federal agent. It's about a system that gave Ryan McKenzie 19 chances, 19 complaints, 16 black victims, 14 years, while black Americans don't even get the benefit of the doubt. It's about departments that protect officers with documented patterns of racial profiling, and the African American citizens who pay the price for that protection with their dignity, their safety, and their constitutional rights.